Hello. Today I'm going to be explaining why progressives should support replacing targeted benefits and tax credits with a universal basic income. And I'm calling this talk Settling Up with Society. My name is Timothy Roscoe Carter. I spent 2 decades as a Social Security and SSI disability attorney. I first published an article advocating for basic income in 2004. And I'm currently the clinic director of the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic at the Justice and Diversity Center of the Bar Association of San Francisco. So the situation here is what I'm calling the false dichotomy, a UBI minus versus a UBI plus. Some libertarians and conservatives support a universal basic income as a replacement for all other welfare and social spending. And a lot of progressives will refer to this as a UBI minus, and in contrast to what they propose as a UBI plus, which is the idea that the UBI should be added in addition to greater social spending and an expanded welfare state. However, that progressive solution has a major problem. While social democracy style spending is good for everyone and something I greatly support and greatly support the expansion of, the welfare state is bad for the poor. Okay, what do I mean by welfare? The term welfare does have different definitions for different purposes. And so I'm using the term welfare here as it's commonly used, at least in the legal aid community, maybe elsewhere, where welfare has 3 requirements. It's a government-funded program. It's means tested so that only the poor tend to get it. And it's targeted to specific needs or populations. And those are programs that we consider welfare. To take some American examples, so supplemental security income is for the disabled or the elderly, and it's based on targeted to the elderly or disabled, but it's based on your need of your income or your assets, and so that's welfare. But Social Security disability insurance is not welfare. You pay into it, you've earned the insurance, and then if you get a pension, or if you retire or become disabled, you're entitled to it by virtue of having paid in, and it doesn't matter your means. Similarly, Medicaid is a health insurance program that's welfare, whereas Medicare is not welfare. That's an entitlement program because you paid into it. Other well-known welfare programs include temporary aid to needy families. That's usually the program people think of in America as welfare. Also food stamps and the earned income tax credit, public housing, a few others. Things that would not be considered welfare under the general definition here, like I said, that includes the current child tax credit, which is refundable, and just about everybody gets it from the upper middle class down, at least this year. Primary and secondary public education, it's available to everybody, not welfare. Parks and recreations run the CDC, FEMA, NASA, scientific research grants, our highway system. Those are all public spending. They're not welfare. And essentially, what I'm going to argue is that these items that fall under welfare are bad and should be eliminated and replaced with a UBI, and social spending that's not welfare, I'm perfectly fine with having and expanding. So why is welfare bad? We'll start off with the targeting. I have a quote here from Carl Wiederquist. If you are an egalitarian, why do you want to be the boss of the poor? And the targeting is where you're being the boss of the poor. You're saying that we should only give money to poor people if they fall in these certain boxes or meet these certain requirements. And so we're using starvation, the threat of starvation or the threat of homelessness, as a way to get the poor to act the way we want them to. Targeting controls the poor. Targeting is degrading, demoralizing, and it's a barrier for the exact people who need it. And the application process takes months or years. It excludes as many people as who receive benefits, and many deserving people just give up. Second part of welfare that's bad is the means testing. Means testing is, if you mean test income, that's essentially a high marginal tax rate right at the poverty line. And whereas if you mean test assets, you are locking the poor into poverty. As a legal aid attorney, I've attended trainings on how to help people spend down, how to help our clients spend down when they get windfalls, how they can spend down the windfall so they can remain eligible. Essentially, we're trained to advise our clients on how to remain poor. And finally, means testing divides the poor and the middle class. It makes the middle class resent the poor and resent the programs because they're having to pay for it. Essentially, means testing is how the rich make the middle class pay the poor not to revolt. So how do we get from here to there? And one of the big questions is, well, okay, but if we just get rid of the welfare programs and replace it with a UBI, aren't there a lot of people currently who will get hurt? And that's true, and that's why we should look at gradually replacing the welfare state with the UBI in order to allow people who have built their lives around the current system time to adjust. And if we do this gradually, it's easier to see problems and make adjustments as we progress. And so a concept here is what I think of as the ratchet UBI. We should, when we're advocating for UBI and we're negotiating with conservatives or other people about what levels of how big the UBI should be, we should always agree to receive to get the highest UBI possible that doesn't make any current poor people worse off. And then once we get that, we should plan to keep fighting for a higher UBI in the future. So nobody's worse off now, and we just keep trying to ratchet it up to eventually replace the welfare system with a UBI. Two specific proposals for how to do this. One is that you could count UBI as income for means tested purposes. So the welfare benefits, which are means tested, then the UBI would reduce those welfare benefits the same as any other income. And as the UBI increases, the means testing programs will gradually become obsolete as the UBI exceeds their income thresholds. Another way to do this is through was Andrew Yang's solution, which is to have an opt-in UBI, where beneficiaries of the UBI can choose between, welfare beneficiaries can choose between receiving their current welfare benefits or receiving the UBI. And then again, as the UBI increases, means testing programs will gradually become obsolete as the UBI exceeds welfare benefits, and then people just drop out of the programs until they're just eliminated because nobody needs them. There is one problem with the ratchet UBI, and that is vertical equity. So that if you have these solutions that I just suggested, then the question that comes up is, okay, why do doctors, landlords, and Jeff Bezos all get their full UBIs at no extra cost to them, with no, while the poor have to lose benefits in order to get their UBI? And for that, as a solution to the vertical equity problem, we need to think about the tax treatment of the UBI. And this depends upon how we are replacing the welfare system. So if we're going to count UBI as income for means tested purposes, then we should also count the UBI as income for income tax purposes. And that way the wealthy will have their UBIs reduced at whatever their marginal income tax rate is. And the other thing, if you're doing an opt-in UBI, then the opt-in choice, and that is, if you're to opt into the UBI, then you should have to give up both welfare benefits and beneficial tax expenditures. And probably few of the wealthy would choose the UBI over things like itemized deductions or favorable capital gains treatment. And I'm to show here how much the United States spends in tax expenditures that help the middle class and the rich. I've got this table here from the Department of the Treasury showing income tax expenditures ranked by total by the total amount spent, projected from 2020 to 2029. What I've highlighted in yellow there are favorable tax treatment of certain types of investment income, like dividends, capital gains, as well as itemized tax deductions. So these are all things that will benefit so the things in yellow are the tax expenditures that benefit the middle class and the wealthy. And then what I've highlighted in pink are items that primarily tax expenditures that primarily help the poor. You can see here the first one that you get to far below favorable capital gains treatment and step-up basis of capital gains at death and a few others. You get down here to the child tax credit. And then there's a bunch more, as well as a bunch of other expenditures that don't fit in there. And you have to get onto the second page here before you get to even the earned income credit. And then there are still further tax expenditures that help the middle class and the wealthy. So under this way of looking at it, then an individual's tax return will not be thought of as a bill. Rather, it should be thought of as an accounting where the individual settles up with society with regard to what they owe to society versus what society owes to them. And I will be available for questions, and thank you for listening.